Greetings, Admirals. This is the Sarcasm Detector coming to you from within the Jenolan Dyson Sphere, deep within the Delta Quadrant. In today's video, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I am not going to be showing you any new ship builds, nor will I be showing you any fancy flying of any sort. In this video, we're going to be talking about EPS, power transfer rates, and overcapping. These subjects are not very well understood, and perhaps I could say they are somewhat misunderstood by quite a lot of people, including experts in this game. So hopefully this video will give you a little bit of clarification. First off, I want to thank @Agrisol and @Saxfire2 for all the groundwork that they initially did testing these theories and getting us a basic understanding of how these work. Additionally, I would like to thank @Snipey47A and @Jarvis and Alfred for additional help and assistance that they have rendered. So let's take a look. Let's dive into this and figure what this thing is. You'll remember from most of my videos, the very first thing that I will point out, one of the very first stats that I'll point out on the ship is its power transfer rate. Why is that? Because this power transfer rate is very, very important. It helps in your DPS and all your system power managements. What is power transfer rate? It is determined by a couple of things. The first thing is the skill Starship Electroplasma Systems. Just going to read this real quick. The skill improves the power transfer rate between Starship power systems. So when you're transferring power from one subsystem to another, the power transfer rate is the speed at which the power moves. This also improves abilities such as emergency power. Alright, so that's simple enough. Now, if you have zero skill, no skill at all, in electroplasma systems, your power transfer rate is 5. Having 9 points in electroplasma systems will give you a 100% boost to that, so it brings it up to 10. There's a few other things that will boost the power transfer rate directly. There are some consoles and pieces of gear that will give you a boost to your EPS skill. That of course will buff it up. There are things that will also just buff it up directly. So look at this. This is a conductive RCS with EPS. And one of the bonuses it has, plus 100% power transfer rate. 100% power transfer rate is 5 points per second. And I have a second one here, which is also 100%, that's another 5. So, base of 5, I have 9 points in the skill, that's 5 points, and these two consoles each give me 5 points, for a total of 20. Now I do have some extra skills here and there that are boosting it, pushes it over 20 a little bit. How does this work? You don't get 20 points of power moved in one shot. It splits it up into packets of 5. So here I have 20 per second. That means when I'm doing anything involving power, the power moves in 4 ticks of 5 power per second. And I'll show you what I mean by that. If I click on this defense, you'll notice that the power is moving between the subsystems, flowing into shields in ticks of 5, and it'll do 4 of them in 1 second. Click on the engines, same thing, it does it a little bit fast. There might be a little bit of a delay here because of the recording. I'm losing some frame rates, so you might miss a little bit, but trust me, this is how it works. Now, the other thing that this does is it regulates the power that you have coming into the system. So if you're running a drain build, for example, so what happens is each of these subsystems has a reserve bucket. That's what I call it. This is the overcap. Now if you're draining someone or something, an NPC or a player, the power that you drain from them coming to you gets put in the reserve bucket first and then moved into your subsystems at the power transfer rate. Again, in ticks of 5. Now, these reserve buckets, usually you can't access them directly. You can't do anything to touch them. However, there is something called the overcap, which you do have a little bit of control over indirectly. What is the overcap? Any power that you get that pushes a subsystem over 125, that extra power over 125 gets put into the reserve bucket. Now, normally these wouldn't affect most of the subsystems like shield, engines, and auxiliary, but for weapons, this comes in to be useful because when you're firing your weapons, they actually drain power. So as they drain power, your power transfer rate is moving power back into the subsystem from the reserve bucket at the power transfer rate. This is basically overcapping. Now, you can have as much power as you want in the reserve bucket, but the amount of power that you can use from the reserve or the overcap is limited by the amount of time that your weapons are firing. For example, beams have a 4-second firing cycle. So the amount of power that you can actually move from the overcap to the beams is 4 times your power transfer rate. Me, for example, I have 20, so I can use 80 points of power spread across 4 seconds in ticks of 5. If my power transfer rate was 10, I would only be able to use 40 points of power across 4 seconds. Same goes for cannons, single cannons, dual cannons, turrets. Those have a 2-second firing rate, so you have 2 seconds to use power transfer rate or pull power from the reserve. So for those type of cannons, the overcap is twice the power transfer rate. Dual heavy cannons only fire for 1 second, so you can only use 1 second's worth of power from that reserve. However, having high power transfer rate does help out cannons, both the dual heavies and the duals, the turrets, and the single cannons. Now, a couple other things that the power transfer rate controls. When you're going in and out of full impulse, the speed at which power goes into engines and then back again into the subsystems after you leave full impulse is again determined by the power transfer rate. The only exceptions to these, the only type of power that is not controlled by power transfer rate is emergency power and batteries. If I over the emergency power to weapons 2, you'll see it has plus 30 weapons. When you click this, the 30 power is dumped into the subsystem immediately. It's the same thing with batteries and battery-like abilities that do this. They will just put their power directly into the subsystem, and if it actually goes over the 125 point limit, then it goes into the reserve. And unfortunately, at that point, when it goes into the reserve, that power is limited by the power transfer rate. Now, why is this important for weapons? Now, there's something with weapons. They have a bonus to damage that is determined by your weapon subsystem here. So, the amount of power you have in your weapon subsystem determines that bonus to weapons firing. At 50 power, you get no bonus. For every point of power over 50, you get 2% bonus. So if you're at 100 points of power in your weapon subsystem, you're going to get 100% increase in damage to your weapons. Now, this is base damage. There's further calculations that go on top of that. So it might not sound like a lot, but it does help out. And we're going to go into detail about that. I have some spreadsheets and charts that will help you understand why EPS, why power transfer rate is so important for damage, and hopefully this will give you a better understanding of how the game works, and perhaps improve some of your performance in game. So now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of it. I got some spreadsheets and charts for you to look at, and hopefully this will clarify things. So what we're looking at right now, base EPS and no overcap. So firing 8 beam weapons that do 4 shots each over time. We're going to take a look at this. So we start off, we hit spacebar to fire all our beams. Weapon 1 goes off. Its weapon power is 125 because the first weapon is always free, and its damage bonus is 150%. Then a quarter of a second later, weapon 2 fires. It costs 10 points to fire, so its weapon power when it's firing is 115, and its bonus is 130. So on for weapon 3 and weapon 4. That is the first second, because beams have a activation timer of 0.25 seconds. In the second, we have weapon 5 firing. That costs 10 power again, so weapon power drops to 85 and a 70% bonus. At the same time, weapon 1 is firing, and it will fire at the same weapon power and the same damage bonus that weapon 5 is. And so on. Weapon 6 will fire with weapon 2, weapon 7 will fire with weapon 3, and weapon 8 will fire with weapon 4. And we drop all the way down to 55 weapon power and 10% bonus. And we will stay there for pretty much the whole duration until we get to the 4th second, which is the 3rd second for the second set of weapons 5 to 8. So weapon 5 and weapon 1 will fire. Weapon 6 and weapon 2 will fire. Now this is the final shot for weapon 2. So it's done, it will return 10 points of power. So the next shot, look here, weapon 7 is at 65, and weapon 3 is also at 65, 30% bonus. Weapon 3 is done. It goes into its return state, 10 power, and we jump up to 75. So the first 4 weapons are done firing. All that's left is for the final 4 weapons to finish off. And here you see, as each one fires, they return 10 points of power till we return to 115. The last one fires, returns 10, and we're back up to 125. So this is with no overcapping at all. I did a sum of all the power, which totals 2,340 divided by 32. Why 32? Because there's 8 weapons and 4 shots. That gives us an average power of 73 and a average bonus of 46.25%. So what happens when you do have overcap? Let's take a look at that. So this is the base power transfer rate. The minimum you can have is 5 with overcap. Like I said before, with beams, your overcap is 4 times the power transfer rate, so 20. And let's take a look at this. It's pretty much the same thing for the first 1, 2, 3, 4th weapon. When we get to the 4th weapon, this is at the end of the second, it subtracts 10 and then adds 5 from the overcap. So instead of dropping to 100, instead of dropping to 95, we're going to 100. And so on, continuing. So weapon 5, 6, 7, 8, the top of the second, we get another 5 points. And again, the first set of weapons is firing at the same time as the second set of weapons. Following that, again, at the end of this set, we get another 5 points. At the end here, it gets a little bit funny. So weapon 2 is done. It returns 10 points. We go up to 80 and 60%. 80% plus 10 again. And we get to the top of this second, so we get 5 as well. We jump up to 95 and 90%. And then by this point, weapon 5, weapon 6, by the time weapon 6 is done, we're back up to 125 power. The average power used, or the average power, is 83.9, and the bonus is about 67%. Does that make sense to you? Let's take a look at some pretty charts with some really pretty colors. Alright, so this is based off of the spreadsheet we just looked at. The 8 weapons and the 4 shots, and this is just the damage percentile bonus that we're getting. You notice the first shot starts off 150, goes all the way down to 10. Second shot, 70%. Remember, weapon 1 is firing at the same time as weapon 5. It goes down to 10%, and it stays there up until we start getting power back when weapon 2 is done shooting. So take a looking at the average for shot 1, shot 2, shot 3 is really low, and we go to shot 4, and the average for each weapon. Total average percentile bonus is 46%. And the little graph here shows each weapon and each shot from each weapon. Just a little visual. So, with overcap, how does it look? You can see it doesn't quite dip as far down. We don't go into the 10%. The minimum we get to is 30%. The average percentile is a little bit higher for each shot and each weapon. And as you can see, the total average damage bonus you get is 68%. So just having 20 points of overcap, which is the max that we can have, boosted our damage bonus by 20%, or added 20% approximately to our damage bonus. Fairly simple stuff. Let's move on and take a look at how Fire at Will works. Okay, this I know doesn't look really pretty, but because of how FA works, what it does is it adds a extra shot. Instead of 4 shots, there's 5 of them. And although each weapon activates on the quarter second, each shot is 0.8 of a second. So because if there's 5 shots in 4 seconds, instead of each weapon firing off once per second, they're firing off once per 0.8 seconds. Another thing you'll notice is there's extra cost here. With FA, the first weapon firing is not free. On top of that, you pay 1 point extra for each weapon firing. So instead of doing -10 drain, so firing 8 weapons normally would cost you 70. With FA, it costs you 88 points of power. The basic idea is fairly similar to before. So weapon 1 fires off, drains 11, and we're at 114. Weapon 2, 3, 4. Here's the difference. Weapon 1 is firing just a split second right after weapon 4, instead of firing at the same time as weapon 5. Just to continue this going downwards, by the time weapon 8 is firing, we're at a minus 26% damage bonus. And because we're not getting any power in, it stays at minus 26 for a good long time. Pretty much until the third shot of weapon 8. Now there are things to mitigate this power drain. We were talking about the power transfer rate and overcapping. Pouring weapon power back into the system helps mitigate this drain and the loss of the damage bonus. Also, having abilities that reduce the cost of weapons will mitigate this somewhat. And sometimes you can do both, like the kinetic cutting beam and the assimilated module 2-piece set. What that does is when that procs, randomly somewhere in this timeline, it will add 10 points of power to your subsystem. It's fairly generous, it procs fairly often, so it really does help mitigate this power loss. Additionally, it will reduce the cost of the weapon firing. So it's a 2-for. This is why you see the kinetic cutting beam and the assimilated module pretty much on every single build since those items were released, or a majority of those builds. Currently the meta's changing. There's new abilities and new pieces of gear that have changed this meta, and it is no longer required to have those 2 pieces, but we'll get a little bit more into that as we get further in. Let's jump into here. We're adding overcap, so every second we're adding 5 points of power. If I scroll down, you'll notice that we get to minus 6 instead of hitting the rock bottom minus 26, and we don't actually stay at minus 6 for very long. See here, we're back up to 4% and climbing. Again, when we get to the very end here, weapon 1, this is the 5th shot of weapon 1. When that fires off, it returns 11 points into the system, etc. And it just keeps climbing. Again with the pretty charts, this time for fall, 8 weapons, 5 shots, and the percentiles. And let's take a look at this. The average for each shot, 51%, drops down to 2%, minus 23%, 2%, and it goes back up. Average for each weapon. So we're looking at a mean average of 16%. This is the damage bonus that we get for Fa with no overcapping. If you remember on this chart, it's 40%. So we lost 30% of the bonus just by hitting Fa. Though you do have to remember, Fa does 1 extra shot of damage, and each shot is hitting 2 targets, so it's not that big of a loss. It's just gonna slow you down killing items. It's basically you're doing less damage over a greater area. Let's take a look here with the overcap. You'll notice that it doesn't quite go down as far as without the overcap, and the damage bonus is 43%. If you look back here without fall, 68% as opposed to 43, so approximately 25%. Still a significant dip. Moving on to what I consider to be a medium power transfer rate of 10 with overcap. So I'm not gonna. It's pointless to have no overcap with 10. It's the same as no overcap with 5. If you don't have power going in, it's going to be the same. So with The overcap of, see, 10 times 4 would be 40. And you can see here there's 40 points. So let's take a look how this goes. So we're getting with 10 per second is 2 ticks of 5. So on the half second we get 5 points. Not going to go over the whole thing over for you again, but the average power is 95. The average bonus is 91%. Here's what I was talking about before, mitigating the cost of the weapon fire. So if you're running emergency weapon cycle, the new trait that comes with the new tier 6 battle cruisers and the heavy destroyer, plus the weapon efficiency that cruisers have, you can reduce your weapon cost to -6.7. Now this is what it should be. Emergency weapon cycle is currently giving double, but for future, in case they fix it, I decided to make the numbers as it is intended to be. So -6.7 power drain and 5 power going into the systems every half second. And we're looking at this 111 average and 123 damage bonus. Looking at the charts for those, you can see the damage percentage is much healthier with just 10 power transfer rate and the overcap. With the power mitigation, you can see it is a lot healthier. Power does not dip below, really it does not get below 90%. So I did the same thing as I did before with FA, the same thing, -11 and power every half second. And of course mitigating it, -7.7 because the extra power cost, the 1 power. Won't get into detail over that, I'll just show you the charts. As you can see, FA still does a really heavy drain, and we dip down to 14%, but it bounces right back really quickly after that. And you can see by the charts, the first shot, the second shot goes down and starts picking up again. Third shot goes down a little bit and climbs back up. Right, the fourth shot's climbing and the fifth shot's up. With the weapon power mitigation, significantly more power. FA is still doing quite a bit of drain, but the average power bonus is 101%. Very high EPS. So I skipped 15 and went straight to 20 because really having 3 ticks per second clicking into here is a PETA and I can't be bothered. So we'll just go straight to 20 and we'll take a look at that. The average here is 110 power and 121%. With the power mitigation, average is 121.78. Remember the cap is 125, so there's hardly any power drain at all. And you can actually take a look here, -6.7 plus 5, so each weapon is costing us 1.7 power only. Picks up fairly quickly. As you can see, by the time the third shot of the third weapon and third shot of the 7th weapon, we're already up to max. And we stay there. Here are the charts for those. Average for each shot and average for each weapon and the total average. And then with the traits and weapon efficiency, average for each shot an average for each weapon. See here on the chart is actually smaller than the other ones. It only goes from 150 to 120%. Weapon dips down, and then they just climb right back up. Again, I do the same thing with FA. So this is without weapon mitigation. And this is with. And these are the charts for those. Without the weapon mitigation, FA still does quite a bit of drain. It dips down quite a bit. 100% weapon damage increase. With the weapon mitigation, up to 135. So again, there are multiple ways to mitigate the power drain. Like we said, reduce the weapon power cost, increase the power transfer rate, and making sure you have enough power inside the overcap or the reserve bucket. Other things you can do is triggering emergency power or a battery in here. For example, if you triggered emergency power at the 2-second mark here, instead of being 103, it's going to jump back up to 125, and there's no drain. It probably wouldn't help with this one so much, but probably over here, for example. Triggering a battery here will pretty much max this back up to 125. So instead of having the low bonus here, or the medium bonus I should say, it'll be at the full 150% for the rest of the run. So I really hope this helps explain what EPS, what power transfer rate is, and what overcap is. I know I only stuck with beams here. It works exactly the same way for cannons, the different type of cannons out there. Like I said earlier in the video, the only limitation is the amount of time that you have. So with beams, we have 4 seconds to pump power back into the subsystem. With single cannons, dual cannons, and turrets, you have 2 seconds, and with dual heavy cannons, you only have the 1 second. However, having a really high power transfer rate in the 20s or above, you probably could do with a lot more than you could do with beams, would really help mitigate the power drain on the cannons themselves as well. Again, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you have, please give us a like, subscribe, and check out some of my other friends. Check out the STO community stream with ValkFX.